Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Good afternoon, Maine. Welcome once again to the Muddy Waters Podcast. We have been off air for a couple of weeks because I was spending some time in Africa visiting my wife and had some things come up and had to miss one of the podcasts I was going to do with Ron Russell, which will be tomorrow, I believe, instead. But we are back. And, you know, as we always say, we exist to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state. Unfortunately, the mainstream media is a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party at this point. It's really sad. I don't even like saying that. I remember I was talking to somebody from the mainstream media and I was sharing this with him. And I gave a lot of examples and he didn't refute me. I won't name him because I don't want to get him fired, but he seemed like an honest guy who actually just really wanted to report the news. And so anyway, but that's the reality. We fortunately have the Maine Wire. We have a couple other like individual freedom fighters, we'll say, such as Unquirer on X and Maine X community, as well as the work that's being done by Southern Maine Republican on Instagram. So there's a lot of other people out there that are doing stuff, but we exist here to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on by interviewing people and giving, you know, especially giving conservatives a better opportunity to get their message out on top of the other channels that exist. And so that's why we're here. And so today we're blessed once again to have with us gubernatorial candidate Owen McCarthy to kind of explain and go into something I think he just released to the public today, which is Maine 2040. Do we have a 2040? Maine? Do we have Maine in 2040? Is that possible?
Well, Maine will be here in 2040. I'll guarantee you that. So that's good. And thank you for letting me be the first one back after this hiatus. Excited that you get to spend some time in Africa. I will say, you know, I think you were the first podcast I went on after I announced my run for governor. And so what a great place to launch Maine 2040 and to go in depth about sort of the why, the what, the pages. I mean, there's 70 pages here. I don't expect a normal human to dive into every single one of them, but we wanted to get out to the people of Maine that like, we're serious. We have a vision. We got to go try to accomplish some things. And here we are.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is I do plan to go read it. I started reading it earlier today, and I realized I did not have enough time to read it before the podcast. But one of the things that I used to work in campus ministry, and I've done some preaching, and one of the things that they say is like, most people, like when a preacher, for instance, says, well, in the Greek, this word means, most people do not care outside of the fact that they're like, he did his research. And that's kind of for most people, they're not going to look at your document. They're going to be like,
I got a plan, everybody, right? Like,
Guy's got a plan, you know? And so I think that at the very least that's really helpful. But let's talk about, like, obviously one of the biggest concerns, there's so many things going on in our state right now, in our nation, you know, and it's hard to believe that we're going to get through this civil war, this apparent like cultural civil war, even if we're not actually at war right now. There's all kinds of animosity between the right and the left, and so like we've got to find a way through that. And you know, with ICE being in town, and all the stuff that's going on with that, and all the nonsense that's going on in places like Lewiston with fraud, not just related to ICE, but like the other things that are going on. Their city council meeting where they just elected an additional person to the city council who was not really the choice of many people in Lewiston. So all kinds of crazy stuff that's going on in our state, and we want to have hope for a future, but I think it's hard for people to do that. But tell us about like what your plan is, how we're gonna and how we get there, how we make Maine a place that people can afford to not just survive but thrive.
Yeah. And Chuck, you know, maybe I'll start there because, you know, when I put this Maine 2040 intentionally takes a longer view, but has short-term wins because you have to have short-term wins. And the whole advent of this was in 2040 is when my kids are going to be in the workforce and they're going to be adults. And I want to make sure that they come to a place where they come into that adulthood where they can survive and thrive, as you said. And so there's some hard work to do to build to that. And there's some quick wins along the way. The three pillars I built the whole plan around was I want to make sure we give them opportunity, and not just them, like people that are working here in the workforce today. We give them opportunity. So opportunity. 2 is affordability, which is like the topic of the day right now. But for working class Mainers, they're losing $500 a month if you do all the averages in their median income right now. And we need to focus on that. And then my last pillar is discipline. And discipline gets into right where you're going with the fraud and spending. We spent $3 billion more than inflation in the state budget the last 7 years, which is unbelievable to me. And we need to take a disciplined approach. And so it starts with a long view. And I imagined, like, how do we build towards something that's going to be that into the future? And then what do we do today? And so that was the opening letter of the plan. And those are the priorities. And like embedded within it, I also thought, if we want economic prosperity, we need to create more of what I call foundational jobs. And foundational jobs are jobs that sell things across borders, right? And like all types of jobs are good, but those ones are particularly interesting because you sell things across borders, you bring in new dollars into circulations into the state, and you do that, you raise incomes, you raise prosperity, right? You attract talent. People talk about, oh, Maine's a place that's doing great things. And you create this flywheel that's going. And then you can really build back a middle class if you do that. And it's part of the plan. We designed it for, within the term of my governorship, 50,000 foundational jobs that are created. So that's sort of the setup for the plan, Chuck. Yeah. And then the second part, which is, we go through every area of government basically. But the second part, the kind of two things that go together, like how do we jumpstart this? One is we need to focus on what I call fixing the fundamentals. The fundamentals are the things that we think about every day and making smart bets on the future. And you need to do those in parallel. You can do those in parallel. So fixing the fundamentals looks like taxes, right? So income tax, immediate cut of 10% for people that make 200,000 or below, with a plan throughout my governorship to remove the income tax completely in that time frame. So that works there, which is betting on that our economy is roaring because we're making the right investments. It's betting on that we're disciplined with spending, and it's betting on that while the rate might go down, but the corporate taxes kind of fill in the gap between the income tax going down, which is sort of what you see with the New Hampshire structured budget, right? So that's one. Two is we are getting strangled on the fixing the fundamentals by regulation. We have in here, a committee that will go through and look at every single regulation. And we also have a rule that we're going to put in place, particularly for rulemaking, because there's administrative rulemaking, that for every rule that my administration announces, we're going to announce they're going to remove 2 of them, right? So we're going to make it more simplified. Like, I don't know if this would bring anyone joy, but we're going to Marie Kondo the rules, right? They're going to make it, if it doesn't make you happy, get rid of it, right? So you got to do that. And then on the spending side, you teed off with this, Chuck. There's a lot of fraud out there. Like it's with every rotting log, you got to check the whole pile. We gotta go through and audit all of that, find all of that, and tear that out and give it back to working class Mainers. And that will help out with the taxes piece also. And so that's sort of the foundation, fix the fundamentals. And then you got to make smart bets on the future. And what that looks like, and I'll stop talking in a second so we can interact on this, but what that looks like is I have a theory of the case, and it's been proven a couple times that in the next generation of maritime, so autonomous ships, smaller ships, next generation drones, sensing, we can create 5,000 plus jobs there alone in that area, I think. And I've got evidence for that. Life sciences is one that's going to grow rapidly. We need to be hunters there. And then forest products, we have given up on it. It still employs 29,000 people. There's new things to do with wood. We got to make sure that like Maine thrives there. And we don't tear out the dams. There's a lot of things to do there. And there's so many. This thing is so detailed. There's so many things I want to tell everyone. Maybe I'll stop just so I don't speak for 47 minutes about everything that's in the plan, Chuck, and we can interact a little bit. So,
yeah, a little bit's fine. I think you're talking about a lot of really, really great things that I think we Mainers want to see, right? We want to have opportunity. We want to have things to be affordable, and we want our government to be disciplined. So I think these are all things that like all conservatives are like, yes, right? One of the things I want to highlight, because I think it's important to kind of I don't know if highlight's the right word, but kind of make sure I'm understanding and make sure everybody at home has the capacity to fully understand as well, is when you're talking about adding 50,000 foundational jobs, that's not just adding 50,000 jobs.
That's right.
Right.
That's
a
those
specific
foundational jobs create 1 to 2 more unto themselves when it happens. Right. So 50,000, I mean, it depends on the ratio, but those are ones that are selling things across borders. But you're still going to have healthcare workers. You're still going to have service work. You're still going to have other things that are in the economy as that's roaring. They're going to do well also.
Yeah. So and that's my point though, is like foundational, those are really good, high paying jobs is the idea, right? Like, and on top of that, there will be other job creation, but like, it's more than just 50,000 jobs. Like, I think that's because that was one thing that I did get a chance to peruse a little bit. And that was one thing that I saw as well. That I thought was really interesting.
It's to me, like those jobs per GDP level, and I'm getting into like economist mode, but it's like 200,000 or more per head gets added to the GDP, like as you start to like create those jobs.
Yeah. Which is huge. So,
and it basically assumes a doubling of our economic growth rate a few years out after we get everything jump started in this state. And so it's a real upward curve on that. And it's something like 1.5 to 2%. The last year or so, it's been a little higher, but over the last 10 years, it's 1.5 and 2%. It goes up to 3 to 4% growth rate. And to do that, you need to add that many jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So like obviously this is like really ambitious, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all this stuff is hard, Chuck, right? Like, all the endeavors, that we go under and you go take on and you can focus on things that with a lofty goal and go try to get it. And if I get 49,150 jobs, foundational jobs, Maine's in a great spot, right? But if we aim low and we hit that, we still might be fighting the same river rivalries we've always been fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need, like, again, it's interesting that I think I had Billy Bob Falkingham on the podcast a while back, and he made a comment about how people our children are leaving Maine, right? There's not enough opportunity here. And like, I remember somebody commented, because I created a short out of that, and somebody commented, well, that's been happening for like 50 years. What are you talking about? This isn't news, is the point that they were getting at. And because it's what is a reality that we've noticed here in the state of Maine is that there's not the creation of jobs. There's not the creation of opportunity. There hasn't been, in 40, 50 years. Yeah. And so, like, I think if we turn that spigot on, I think there's a lot of opportunity if we actually intentionally create a structure that makes it advantageous and encourages business and business growth, and we have that for a sustained period of time. I really do think that there's a lot of opportunity for growth. Obviously, we had the LePage years. One of the challenges obviously are having the other elements. Assuming you win the governorship, you also have to deal with House and Senate and all that other kind of stuff. But obviously, like, this is what you hope to do if everything goes according to plan, right?
Well, and you for certain won't hit what you don't aim at, and so this is the vision and plan, right? That puts a marker in the ground, and we can work towards it. Communicates to the world on the other side of winning. Like, these are the things we're going to go try to get done, and that creates opportunity unto itself, And like, I was strategic as I thought about the plan too, because some of the structural stuff, I mean, everyone's going to promise it's going to happen at day one. Like, even I talk about the income tax, that's phased in over time. Some of the other stuff takes time to do. Like, I'm not naive to think government moves super fast, even though I move fast, right? But where we can win early, like let's talk about maritime innovation for a second, right? Like, that is the place that the Trump administration is most concerned about from a national security perspective. If we ever get into conflict in the South China Sea, et cetera, there's a challenge there. Like, things have changed. Like Bath Iron Works is great. We should keep them alive, right? Obviously, like, employs a lot of people. Portsmouth is great. The next generation is smaller, it's faster, it's more nimble, and these shipyards are getting built. There was a shipyard just got announced in Washington State. Why can't the next one be announced in Maine? A friend of mine recruited 2 companies. He called 10 in San Francisco in this sort of maritime, maybe aerospace like cluster, and got 2 of them to come to Brunswick and they're signing leases. And he's a random guy. And if we were focused on it with hunters out there every single day, we could land more companies in this space. And why did they want Maine? They're like, oh, you have talent. You have the fourth largest coastline. You're willing to do testing here. You have the suppliers that are government qualified suppliers because of Bath Iron Works. Like all of that is attractive, even when we're the fourth highest tax state, and even when the costs are like all these pieces. And so if we can have some wins there while we fix the fundamentals, and that flywheel starts going, we can have a lot of a big kind of growth on the other side of that. And I also, in addition to like those focus areas, I see the fourth industrial revolution, like what's happened is AI is new for everyone, right? So we missed the third one that we didn't miss it, but the internet didn't do so well for Maine, right? The paper mills got hammered. We lost a lot of foundation jobs, right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure we don't miss out on this opportunity. Right? There's one thing I have in here, and I have AI and Web3 in there, which is a little nuanced, but which is digital assets and what's happening with the Genius Acts and stable coins, and it's more than just regular crypto, but there's a lot that's going on in finance there. Arctic is an interesting one.
Do you want to spend any time, like before you get into Arctic? Do you want to spend any time on that like stuff? I remain a skeptic. I have owned some coins, but I tend to be a little bit more skeptical. So
in crypto, there's a lot of gambling that goes on, and there's a lot of sort of.
Nope. Did I lose you, or did you lose me? Oh, I think you're back. Sorry.
I'm back. I lost connection, and when I said there's some crypto gambling that happens, and so maybe the people online are watching me, and the editing is out. No, but the underlying technology of what's going on with blockchain and the ability to do fractional ownership and the ability to take something and make it transparent. Like imagine this, Chuck, if we took every transaction that happened on the Maine budget in real time or near real time and put it on the blockchain, and everyone could see it at every single time, and it's completely transparent, and the people of Maine could know where their dollars are going, and in a way that's rigorous, right? Like that could be really interesting. The Genius Act, which just got passed at the federal government last year, creates do you know what a stable coin is?
Yep.
It creates a regulation from the federal government for stable coins, which are essentially like a way to transmit, dollars in a digital form that's backed by treasuries or gold or something like that. So it doesn't fluctuate in price that much. Gold does, but it doesn't it has a real asset. And it will help out make transactions seamless across borders and other places. There's now a federal law on that gives states authority for 10 billion and below, assets for 10 billion and below. And I think that's an opportunity for Maine, both to have a regulatory environment where we might get some more licensing fees in and change revenue if we have something set up, and to look at sort of a state endorsed stable coin for transactions in the state. And that's going to become more and more of a thing. There's already like trillions? I might be getting the right. Upper billions to trillions of assets that are like going on to stable coins right now. And so it's real. I think you got to think of the industry more than just like the meme coins. So I'm not that you are, but like, I do think there's something real there below the surface.
Yeah, it's a much longer conversation into the coin space. I know there's a lot of people that are in love with it. I have my reservations, but definitely with the ones where people are trying to invest in something that only has value if people based on sentiment. But if things are backed by something, that's a whole nother story. And I think I have a lot more. I like that a lot more than the things that are just like, well, what is Bitcoin backed by, for instance? Well, Bitcoin is backed by the fact that it has a limited supply and people want to buy it. That's it. 100%. There's nothing else. There's no economy. There's no real asset. It's just if people value it and want to pay for it.
Yeah.
These stable coins seem
Yeah,
different.
they're different. Bitcoin is more stable than many of the other ones, though, just because of like the
It
over
is.
time and people have given value to. I mean, we could go in a whole rabbit hole. I'm just saying like this.
Yeah.
This federal government is now passing like regular. There's another bill of Clarity Act that's coming in the federal that will. This market is being created. JP Morgan are creating products, right? All the big banks are, right? It's one that we don't need to be the 50th state to imagine like what to do here, like we are with all.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
The other place where
100%.
I'm really bullish is the Arctic. As that melts, we're going to be in the center of trade. We have a lot of assets to take advantage of. Eastport, Searsport, Portland. We can both be a shipping hub and the center of commerce. I mean, this is why Maine 2040, right? You got to build the railroads, you got to build the infrastructure, you got to get people to invest here. But let's aim at that and let's try to win there. I think that's another place to place a smart bet. I think there's those are some of the cross-cutting themes and the remote workers. Like there's been. Which is why the income tax is really important in my mind, because people have been unlocked from having to be nearby where they work. That may go back in the bottle a little bit, but not by a lot. And so we got to imagine, in addition to designing Maine to be a place we can get products to market, that we can get people to place. And for example, one of the things I'm advocating in here for that I heard a lot on the trail for remote work in rural areas was, and like we had a lot of people that moved in during COVID, and then they were saying callous, and they had to go back to their offices like once a quarter. To do that, they got to drive to Bangor for 2 hours, to fly to Newark, to fly to the markets wherever it is. And so one of the recommendations here is to work with the federal government to get more small regional flights, say to places like Boston. And to connect those markets so people can make it easier for them to get out, so you can get remote workers back into those places. And so, there's a lot of like interconnected pieces within the plan that kind of all work towards this. Like we're creating a lot of jobs here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I didn't even think about that, but that is a really good point, that in order to get a lot of them have the remote workers stay here and want to live here, like making it the lowering taxation as well as you kind of mentioned.
8 states right now
you need to go into
8 states have no income tax. 3 states are announcing that they're not going to have an income tax in the coming. They just have, right. My prediction is this is going to be an arms race, particularly in remote work world. Where that like you start to get to a certain number and people are going to start seeing like populations leave and they're going to have to go there from other states. And so we're going to have to get on board just from a market dynamics perspective. Yeah,
absolutely. So this is the goal, right? Or some of the goals. Like this is the direction that we want to go. Now, what's interesting that I noted, you mentioned earlier that this is, beyond. This is not a short-term plan, right? This is not like
short-term things, and they're both.
Yeah, right. But but your focus, like you're trying to think about like what is the Maine going to look like in 2040, which is long past or far beyond what your term would be, assuming you got elected to a second term, because that's 8 years, right? And so the hope and the goal is to set things up that would last the long term and be able to continue to grow and create a Maine even beyond your term. How do we get there? Is that you want to go, or you want to run down through more of the plan, like if that makes sense?
Well, let's go through more of the plan. But to that specific question, a lot of things are set up to start this flywheel effect, right? Like, I'm a big believer that if you get things rolling, and you become known for something and you market it well, and you start to see success, that's like a snowball rolling downhill. We've kind of had to go the opposite direction, more of like a managed decline. And that will pick up and continue to like go beyond even what we can imagine here today. Right. So I think that's that. Some of the other recommendations are, a lot of activities recommended aren't done at the government level, right? Like I don't, like the Katahdin Horizon partnership, which is in there, which helps like a private public partnership, which sets strategy and helps fund in the maritime, advanced forest products, and life science space. That's not within government. That's an outside of government entity and will be set up to last beyond administration, right? So there's some of these things you can do to last beyond yourself that aren't going to get just torn down, by the other side. And there's ways to kind of set that up. So okay, let's say we fix the fundamentals and let's say we make some smart bets and that's all going. I actually have 2 economic development sections. I have like smart bets are the first one. The other one is like, we need to meet with our existing companies and understand what will keep here. We need to hunt new organizations, maybe even outside of those focus areas, to come here. We need to take care of our agriculture, fishing, and tourism. And there's recommendations for those industries here because they're important to us. So that section was set up with the idea that this is not just chase shiny objects, right? We're going to make some bets, but we also need to, make sure that we survive and thrive some of the existing stuff that's in here. And so that's why there's almost two economic development sections that are in this plan. And then we go to education. And in education, my number one focus as I set this up is 4th grade reading. And I say that because as I studied the state, and I studied other states, and I thought about the long-term plan, 1 in 3 4th graders in the state of Maine can read at grade level right now, which
1 in 3.
Yeah, and I heard a stat that it was 1 in 4 the other day. So it could be worse. So like there's that banner of folks, and thinking about it, right up to the 3rd grade, which they measured in 4th grade, but up to the 3rd grade, you learn to read, and then you read to learn the rest of your life, right? Like it's kind of foundational. And when I went through the schools, we were 4th in the country in this realm, and now we're near last. And places, and it's something I think that everyone can rally behind because we want our kids to be able to read. And places like Mississippi, Mississippi has gone from 49th to 9th in that realm. And they have the beauty of the United States is that they have a playbook that worked, and we can copy a lot of the playbook. And one of the things they did, which is in the plan, was they passed the science of reading law, Chuck, which basically says if you're a teacher and you respect your ability to pick your curriculum, right? So you can pick whatever curriculum you want, except for curriculum that's proven not to work, which sounds, it's evidence-based. We got to follow the science, as everyone says, right? Like, let's follow the science, evidence-based. The interesting thing right now, 50%, 50, according to a MEPRI report, which is an independent think tank in Maine, of Maine schools are teaching non-evidence-based reading curriculum, and then wondering why our kids can't read. And so I think that's one we can get everyone rallied around, and we can go work on, and we can put the troops behind, and go make sure our kids can read, because they need to be able to read to learn the rest of their lives. And so that's sort of, there's a lot more in education in here. We have a Parents' Bill of Rights in here. We have protection from smartphones, but also teach them AI right in here, right? There's a expand the charter school cap, 1 a year, and every year it gets filled, you add 1 more in here. Like there's a lot of good stuff, but the center of it is we need to have a 4th grader be able to read so they can learn the rest of their life.
Yeah, seriously. I mean,
yeah. And
who could be opposed to that? It's like, well, like I think some people are like, we want them to read, but are you not going to teach them DEI?
Okay, Chuck. I hear that one. I also hear, and granted, there's some great teachers, and there's also they're working hard, and there's a lot of challenges. And I hear like, well, the parents are like, they're not reading at home. The parents are tough, or they're not getting meals, which I also do think my mom was a lunch lady. Like the school lunch, universal free school lunch is still in here. I think that's important because people need to be able to eat at school. But I hear all these things. And my counter to that is, don't you think those things existed in Mississippi? Right? Like what? And actually, if you adjust for socioeconomic status, Mississippi is number 1 in the country for 4th grade reading. right now. And
Wow.
so those are all inputs that we need to solve around, but they should not be excuses that stops us from teaching our kids how to read.
Yep, 100%. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a kind of like we have like if we're not doing that, what are we even doing? You know what I mean? Like if kids can't read at level in 4th grade, like education in general, right? It builds on itself. Math even more so. That's very dangerous. We'll avoid talking about math because we don't want to stress people out with numbers.
I do love numbers. I was an engineer. I wanted to go deep in math too, but I'm like, keep it focused for the plan, you know?
Yeah, well, if we get too far into math, people are going to just tune out because of that, because it stresses them out. But the reality is all education builds on itself, right? And so like what's really important to understand for if you're not paying attention, right, about the idea that only 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 4th graders is reading at level, well, they're still not reading at level in 5th grade. And it's a kind of like a snowball effect as they get older and older and older. It's so much more difficult with just in general teaching kids. It's much easier to teach them the right way to do things and how to do things and how to learn and all that kind of stuff the younger they are. So if we're not doing it at those ages, it's much more challenging, even if we have the right teachers and the right approach as they get older, to course correct. It's a lot easier to train the right way the first time than it is to correct it in the future. And so that should be frightening to anybody who's paying attention, anybody who's listening. 1 in 3, 1 in 4, whatever it is, of 4th graders. That's very, very scary. And obviously we've got to address that. And again, who could be against that?
Right. I mean, it's one that's like, let's go do it. Let's showcase we have the muscle to solve problems. And you can start to see, you know, a couple years out, you put some changes in place, you start to see the results, right? Like, because, you know, if it starts first, second grade, that will come through quick. So it's a good one to solve that will help a lot of people. And you can show some quick wins on that over time. So, and then we address healthcare. Chuck is next on the list.
That's frightening. That's frightening. Healthcare, one of the biggest problems in the American system, especially impacting people's finances.
And so
I'm excited to hear about this one.
Me, you know, I come from healthcare, right? So built a company there. Unfortunately or fortunately for the plan and for the state, like I've been in the ins and outs of like all of the little details, like how providers work and how payers work and how manufacturers work and in the Medicaids and the Medicares and all the commercial insurance. And so one of the things that I decided to focus on for the plan that I see is it gets us a bang for our buck in a couple of ways, is access to care. And the reason I focused on access to care is because in places that don't have access to like a clinician, like whether that be a PCP or a mental health provider or other pieces like that, they end up going to the emergency room as much as possible. And when you go to the emergency room, not only is it the most expensive place for the care, it's also the place where their job is to make sure you're not going to die, basically, and like get you out of the emergency room. And so like unless it's life threatening, they're gonna get it to a point that it's stable and get you out, and then you still need to go find access on the other side of this to something. And so how to get access? One is, this is basic, but EMS, like the getting to and from places, right? Like in some places in Maine, you call 911 and no one shows up. So there's a reform to EMS in here that looks at that. 2 is licensing reciprocity. And I say that because we have other states have clinicians that will do remote care, virtual care, remote care. We have people that need care. And so any profession that is, we have a workforce shortage, we're going to offer reciprocity for people to come in virtually to help out, like whether that be PCP or NPs or otherwise mental health practitioners. And while, you know, like we kind of created these like 50 markets in the US, like it like helps smooth out the supply and demand for that sort of thing. And you can't correct everything virtually, but it's a good front door for people to be able to triage things quickly and to get some thoughts there. The next piece is looking at the critical access to the smaller hospitals or smaller facilities in rural areas. I've seen this work well in other places where if you supercharge the NPs or the PCPs there by allowing them to bring in a specialist into your visit, like imagine Chuck, you're from St. Albans, where you?
Close, Athens.
Okay, where was the closest healthcare facility to you from there?
Skowhegan, which is not far. It was like 15
okay,
minutes.
Let's say you go over to Skowhegan and there's not like okay, this is going to get more. Imagine you have cancer and they don't have oncology there, right? Like you go over there and you, instead of driving to Portland or Bangor, you go to Skowhegan, you get in with your PCP that's at the facility. They bring in an oncologist virtually. And you kind of triage what's going to happen, et cetera. You don't have to drive so much. You can get that kind of care. You got to facilitate the payment between the providers to make that happen. And so while seemingly it looks like you're paying more money, you're actually saving you from downstream effects if you do that, and allowing you to actually get cancer care and not have to drive. I had a relative that decided not to get cancer care because it was a 2-hour drive each way. And so that would help out the rural hospitals get some money. It would save the expensive emergency room visits, and it would bring in people to those facilities. Yeah, you have a question.
Well, I know it's less of a question, more of like and it would also ensure like that your doctor was part of that conversation, your PCP, which makes sure that you're like, I mean, that's really important to have. Because like there are so many different specialists that you could bring in that the person that helps you like would help you the most. I think kind of interpret all that stuff would be somebody from within the field that your PCP is more of a generalist. They understand and anyway they would be able to help. I think help you navigate. That's partly where they come into your healthcare. So I think that there's a lot of value there. I think the biggest concern that most people are going to have is how does Maine Health make money off of that?
How does Maine? Well, so it's not all.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. That's the joke. The monopoly.
Yeah. Well, there's Northern Lights, there's Maine Health, right? Like, right now we just don't have enough care. Like we have a shortage. People have to. There was just an article in Bangor Daily. It's like even PCPs, like in Bangor, where do you get a primary care doc, right? Like this will help out. Yeah. Like these ideas will start to help out with that and start to kind of get to a better spot.
Which should reduce the total amount of money that people are paying on healthcare, because if they're getting seen when they need to, right, that should reduce the things getting bad. So that, and like I have a couple situations where people were like, hey, I have this medication, I need to get renewed. I don't have a doctor right now. How do I get a doctor? And it's like, well, it's going to take you 3 months to get seen for your initial intro, because there are no PCPs that have, or if they do, so there's a lot of ways to
Utah, this one is a little more sci-fi, but one to explore for refills of prescriptions, and it'd be under the care of your doctor and like related to that. They have sort of like they have built a tested by, I think it's FDA regulated AI system that will do the quick review and allow you to get you can't get the initial prescription, but from some of those administrative steps, that will help out with that. And so places where we can do those sort of things, that's also in here, recommend to explore to remove some friction and costs from the system overall, right? So the other one is the payer mix, right? So access is good, right? That will say payer mix. We have 440,000 people on MaineCare. Like we have a lot of Medicare, like, and then the commercial insurance, like those, the MaineCare Medicare reimbursed below the rate it costs to deliver the service. And then everyone makes up, like say the hospital, they make up all their margin or try to break even on the commercial insurance, which is why commercial insurance has been going through the roof, because we've been getting more MaineCare and more MaineCare, right? So one of the things I've noticed with the MaineCare program, and as I've been talking to people across the state, there hasn't been a business owner, particularly in rural Maine, I've talked to that isn't like, oh, and I've got a person, they work 20 hours a week, I want to give them a raise, or they want to work more. If they do, they lose their benefits because they're below the line. They have kids, they can't lose their benefits, and it's this cliff. And so we have created a sort of like a phase off program instead of a cliff for people. It's which you have to work with the federal government for, because you need a waiver to like add that into the Medicaid program, because there are federal dollars also. But as people work more, they can make more money. They can have different levels of benefits that they can afford, but they can still get ahead and it's basically an incentive for people to go to work. State will spend less money, and there'll be more people that move into commercial, and it'll be a healthier mix for everyone involved, and that will help out a lot over time with how we think about both costs in the state budget, workforce, and the stability of our healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest problems at Cliff that you talked about. I've heard a couple other gubernatorial candidates talk about it, and I think I'm glad that our conservatives are recognizing that reality. One question I usually have in relation to that is, it's only like that kind of like step, we'll say, that like not Cliff, but what was that? I don't remember what term it was that you used,
like a phase off.
A phase off. Like in my opinion, like one of the concerns that I think a lot of people will have, some people would have with that, is like, it's not adding new people to be on MaineCare. It's only if you're currently already on, then there's a phase out. But like that, because I think this is one of the reasons that this has not been addressed, is like the conservatives are like, no, we don't want to add more people.
It's not an expansion.
So we're not going to.
It could be look like an expansion. It's
right.
Not an expansion. Right. Like it's.
So it's one of those things where if you're already on, then in order to help you get off, there's a phase out. But we're not going to add other people who would, be at that income level where somebody who's on is being phased out. They don't, get the phase out level benefits.
Yeah, we've run it as like a pilot program to start, right? Like, starting with people that are on
to make sure
to do that and to like work out all the kinks, make sure that like that doesn't happen, and you set it up that way. Like that fair concern, and we thought about that, but we do it that way.
I figured probably, but I figured it was worth asking.
It's a good point. The other one is in healthcare is I'm really concerned. The hospital I was born in and the hospital my brother was born in no longer have children born there anymore. The labor and delivery units are closed down. And the closest one to a place like Patton, Maine is an hour and a half each way. And if we think about, exactly. Yeah. If we think about attracting remote workers or bringing back foundational jobs or aiming at some of the old mill sites as being like almost like a phoenix being reborn with the reindustrialization of America, we need to make sure that like families can see themselves living in those communities. And that starts with being able to not have to drive an hour and a half if you think you're in labor. And, it's been on my mind for a long time, but I didn't have a full solution to it for a while, right? Because it's like, there's a density problem, right? There's less people density. But I've been studying the rural health transformation funds coming from the federal government. And my view is under my administration, we're going to take a portion of those to jumpstart for a period of time, not forever, but while we're rebuilding the economy, jumpstart a number of labor and delivery units across the state. So we create the conditions that families will want to move into those areas. And so those funds are perfect for that. Plus like a bunch of other like innovative things you could do with that. So we'll address that.
That's awesome.
Okay, Chuck. I mean, we've been going. I mean, there's a lot here. I got housing left. I've got infrastructure. We've got energy. We got.
Well, I definitely think. Yeah, I definitely think we're going to hit all.
Yeah, we got them all. Where do you want to go next?
Yeah. Well, I think energy is probably like it's winter, right? I think energy is maybe bigger than housing at this point. So I would say let's go to energy next. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we all know the problems, right? We're fastest growing in the country, double anywhere else last year. We're the 5th highest, right? We have the most unreliable grid et cetera. Problems. We got all the problems, and they're policy problems. I mean, like the net energy billing program has added 10% of the cost, $2.5 billion market. 250 million of that is solar subsidies right now for developers. So it was an attractive program. It was like the wildcatter era of solar. People are building it everywhere, and people have woken up and people are frustrated by it. And so and we don't have base layer energy in the winter, right? Because it doesn't work in the winter. We got to bring in LNG into Everett or oil into Cousins Island for electricity, and that is everywhere I go. I'm not been to a spot where someone hasn't said, "Hey, Owen, did you know my light bill used to be this and now it's this?" And like, what are we going to do? So what are we going to do about it? So one, the energy billing program, we got to go and we got to negotiate out of those contracts. Two, if you look on the bill, those public policy charges show up on the CMP bill or the Versant bill or wherever. That's like a hidden tax, and this drives me crazy. Like, we're going to move that into the legislature. Like, we're going to get it off the light bill. We're going to move it over, and then we're going to argue it should be as low as possible. And so we do it in the appropriate way. We don't bury taxes on fees on Mainers, right? And so I think that will be helpful. That will lower everyone's electrical bill into itself, and we'll figure it out, in the appropriations process. But, knock that down. Got to look for base layer energy. 2 ways to do that in the near term. In here, we talk about Clean Energy Connect just came online. I think there's 15 to 20% more capacity on those lines. We're buying as much as possible of that into the grid, at least the ISO New England grid for Maine. And we're flying up to Canada day one to go do that. Hydro is cheaper than anything we got right now. So we got to go do that. 2 is, there's renewed interest. There was back in 2013, we got so close on taking the Algonquin pipeline, the natural gas pipeline that comes from Connecticut up into Massachusetts, opens up into Maine. And the project was to take an existing right of way, so you don't need to run any more line, take the existing pipes, double the diameter of the pipes, and increase the gas flow coming from there. And it got shut down in Massachusetts. We're going to aggressively work with the New England governors to revitalize that project, which then it'll help out with electricity and with heating, frankly, right? If we're able to do that. And what I like about that project is you don't need to deal with the NIMBYs, right? It's already there. You're using existing lines, right? So you're just doubling the capacity. And it's more likely to happen faster because of that, because you don't have to, you already have the permits. There's always the right of way. You already have the stuff. And so those are the 2 base layer, near-term options. In the long term, we need experts in energy in the team, right? We don't have those currently, right? So we need to make sure that happens. We need to amend the renewable power standard to include, remove the cap on hydro, which 100 megawatts and below right now, 100 megawatts and above hydro does not count for renewable energy, even though water just flows by the dams, right? So that's okay. And we're going to add nuclear to the list of clean energy. We're then going to,
sense.
Longer term, we're going to remove we'll do it immediately. Longer term impact for Mainers. We'll remove the restrictions on nuclear energy, so we can't even study it right now. We got to begin the feasibilities. We got to pass a law so we can begin the feasibility studies, and then we'll build small modular and become energy independent. We're in an interesting spot because in Maine, we actually have the talent because of Portsmouth that work on the trades to work on nuclear subs and nuclear things. And so we have the talent here that if we were to get early into the industry and build it for our energy, we could also be a place that manufactures small modular nuclear reactors for other places because we have talent. So it could be part of the foundational jobs program in addition to energy.
Sure. Yeah.
So those are some of the things in energy on the to go do to impact everyday Mainers.
Yeah, what I like about this, and you're kind of outlining a number of different things as we go through each different category, is there are near-term solutions and long-term solutions, and I think that's really important because we have to be able to show impact in the short term. People. Geez, we as humans are just we have such a hard time focusing on the long term. Some of the reasons I think people get upset with Trump tariffs and things like that is partly because I don't think they understand how economics works. That's number one. But number 2 is they see a short-term negative as it could cause the price of the things that they buy to go up, and they miss out on the long-term good of the U.S. economy. And so I think, but that's just the reality. That's how people think. They think, how is this going to positively impact me in the here and now? And we have to do things that are going to positively impact people soon, but also plan for the future. This is one of the biggest problems in general that people get themselves into. I used to help people with their finances, right? Everything is always about, I need this right now. It's like, no, I get that, but we also have to think about the future. So your plan has both, how do we do some stuff that's going to help in the here and now, and then how are we going to help for the long term? Because nuclear in particular, I've heard some people argue this, but it seems like that's a long-term endeavor, because even if we can get everybody on board for it and things like that, it's going to take time to ramp up and take years to build. And so that doesn't help people pay their light bill next winter, right?
Well, it's a couple of comments there. That's right. But if you never start, it's always longer term, right? So you got to start somewhere, right?
Sure.
Like it's like one of those lines that's always a certain length that you need to get started at some point, right? And that's sort of this is my Gantt chart in my head, engineer that's going through. But your point is good. I go back to my experience building startups. I built a couple of companies, and you got to go raise private capital from investors, right? And so part of that is you got to pitch them how the future will be different for the existence of your company, right? And like what's going to change majorly, and how you're going to change healthcare, or how you're going to change 3D printing, etc. And then you need to give them the confidence that what you need to do tomorrow. Like to set out on this audacious journey to go towards that long-term goal. Like, okay, what's important now? What are you going to go do tomorrow? Because usually investors don't do, and voters and the people of Maine are the same way, in my opinion. They're not like Chuck. Like, I know it's going to take you $100 million to do this project. I'm going to give you all of it today. Good luck. Check in with me in 8 or 6 years or 8 years. They say, okay, here's 3 million, get to the next milestone, prove you can execute, right? And then do it again, and then do it again, right? And my framework here is the same way. It's like, if you elect me governor, right, we have the vision, we're going to go out to Maine 2040, we're going to do all these things, we're going to talk about what that looks like, but prove it, go prove it. And you got to have things to do to show the trust and that you're building the momentum over time, or you're not going to bring people along with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think that makes perfect sense. And I love the kind of the dual nature of thinking about both short and long term, because that's what we got to do. Next, I think I would say infrastructure. You want to, because I think infrastructure, just for fun, I've spent some time in a couple other countries, and I think not having the appropriate infrastructure, the government, I think there are some people right now, especially with how much our government is spending, that would like the government not to ever spend another dime. I actually heard somebody from Susan Collins' office was talking about how she's making sure that the government keeps spending money on. He didn't say it like that, but it was more like making sure that we're still funding our government. And I'm like, that's okay. You don't need to, because there's I think they do enough funding. They need to fund less. They need to spend less money, right? And so I think there's some aspect of everybody who's like, geez, we don't even want to talk about government spending, but in order to have a successful, supply chain, all these other things, we need a base level infrastructure in order to be able to do that. And I notice in your plan, you note that we are one of the things that we're ranked 50th in is our infrastructure. And so having the appropriate infrastructure creates the space for businesses and people to be able to thrive, right?
No, that's right. And when I also looked at infrastructure, I looked, there's a policy in here for roads and bridges, and we need to prioritize. Some of that is catch up. Some of the bridges are in rough shape, and so we need to prioritize the ones that could be decommissioned, and look at other approaches. Maine has developed some really interesting composite ways to put up bridges faster that will last a long term, that will be cheaper. And so we need to connect and leverage that, which is in there. We need to continue to think about serious crashes and looking at dangerous conditions, etc. I also think about infrastructure when it comes. I think about broadband, right? Like whenever we put a road in, right? We're already doing. Whenever we upgrade the highway, we should put in where it's justified broadband conduit, right? When it's there, or upgrade that. We're already digging it. It's not that much extra cost. or at least put the conduit in so you can run future broadband through it if you need to upgrade it. And that would help out a lot as we become more and more connected. The Arctic trade, I have kicking off the Governor's Council on Arctic Competitiveness, which will recommend the investments, private or public. Like, not all need to be public dollars, right? Like, if we convince the world that we are going to be the place for Arctic shipping, private companies will invest in. You need to invest a little base layer, but I want to get private dollars in. Private companies will invest in, the billionaires of the world like to invest in to build it out. We just need to have the vision and what's the backbone to do. So we'll have a group there. I want to work with. There's multiple parties involved with this, but I want to get a fast track train from Portland to Boston. For right now it stops at every little town on the North Shore. I want at least twice a day to have one that just goes straight there, which would save 30 to 40 minutes of time and could make that commute much easier for the 1/3 of people that are remote workers here. I want to add, actually, you may, if you look in the long range plans of the Portland Jetport right now, there is for a chunk of change ability to add customs out of there. And it's in the long range plan. So we can have international flights. Airlines have demand, they think, for international flights in and out of here, which would open up our Arctic business, would open up travel. One of the flights is Aruba in the winter too. So if you want to go to a warm place in the winter, right now, that would be here. The parking debacle like with the Portland City Council, where they wouldn't let them cut down a dozen trees or whatever it was in a state that's 92% forest, has essentially put that on ice. We got to figure out a way to make that happen, because I have a suspicion that will increase a lot of people's willingness to set up headquarters, to come and do business in Maine. It will increase tourism, right? It's a hot place to be. Like, we got to add customs to the Portland airport. I talked about the regional connectivity already. We have, I was surprised to learn this. I shouldn't have been, but there's like, York County is kind of an island sometimes, for transit. And I say that because I was talking to some of the tourism driven places, like, the Cape Netix, Gunquits down there. They have a hard time getting workers down to them. There's no public transit down there. They have a lot of jobs that could be offered, but there's no way to get there. And so I want to work with those employers, and they'll pony up some cash, but as a way to have sort of a workforce transportation down to that area, so we can meet those needs from a Sanford or from a Biddeford or from other places like that. I find, ironically, I think people just drive by York County a lot of times and like forget about that. And so we like, those are some of the things. And then we're going to have, from this public-private partnerships perspective, because not all dollars. I actually think the more we can get in that aren't state dollars and our hardworking taxpayers of Maine, the best to solve for some of these things. We're going to create a infrastructure, finance, and business development joint position that was really smart about how you put these things together and how you can work on these kind of deals, because they're different than anything else. And we're going to do that. And it's going to be someone that lives in both DOT and Department of Economic and Community Development, sort of a co-appointed role.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Makes sense. Infrastructure is not something that I have a lot of knowledge and understanding of. So this is like really helpful. And I'm going to study some more of what you've got here. This is a short version.
Yeah. We've covered a lot, Chuck. My main takeaway here is, we're building for the future. Like, I think we need a roadmap, and want to be the guy with a plan to go get there. I want to rally people behind me. I put in the plan that this is a living and breathing document, right? So if people have other ideas and things to add in, send them along. I'm going to, from time to time, do, deeper dives on some Substacks already, like on certain areas, and those will get attached to the plan. But these are hard challenges, but we should make no little plans, because it's hard to do little things. It's hard to do big things. We might as well do something big.
Yeah, I think there's an old quote that I remember from one of my favorite movies is big changes are easier than small ones. And so I think that, having a good long-term plan with some short-term, I think this is what we're seeing, but shooting for the stars is really important. One of the other things that I think is interesting is I look through some of like the current state of where we're at with, we're 50th in new business starts, 50th in infrastructure. We've got 42,000 housing unit shortage, 5th highest electricity, one regulation for every 10 people in the state, highest monthly grocery cost, which is crazy. And for 41st and 8th grade math, which is frightening.
Here's the chart we're looking at right here.
Yeah, and the oldest population in the nation. Like, these are all very, and then that clip about one in three Maine fourth graders are reading at grade level. We're in such a terrible situation that if we can get anybody elected to governor and have a decent House and Senate, it'll be really easy to look good and show some progress. And because you were kind of talked about, like, part of what you're doing is I think you called it the flywheel, kind of thing where you start doing some things and then other stuff is just naturally going to build on that. Like, when you're in as bad of a situation as we are, making even some small headway is going to make you look really, make anybody who's in that role look really good. But the point is, like, you can only go up from here. It's hard to get worse than where we currently are at. Although, if you're at home and you're trying to figure out, do I vote Democrat or Republican? If you want to see if it's possible to get any worse, vote Democrat. But if you
can't get relative worse, but we can get actually worse.
Right. Exactly. Right. We're the worst compared to the other states, but we can't get any worse than that. But we can get
We can start picking out other countries if you want as a comparative set.
That's right. That's right. Like Venezuela, maybe. But anyway, although they're going to turn things around, I think. But anyway, so I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, and I really appreciate, again, in my role both as the chair of the Cumberland County Republicans and in this podcast, I don't endorse candidates or anything like that, but I appreciate that we've got so many candidates and that have, I think, the right views and the right values, and that you've done a lot of work to try to figure out what we need to do to demonstrate that what needs to happen. And I think now the challenge is now we got to get a Republican elected, but so I thank you for taking the time,
Chuck. Well, let's go do it. So
absolutely. And we need all hands on deck, people at home, whoever you pick, whether it's Owen or one of the other candidates. We gotta focus on getting people. So we got to get out and vote in those primaries, but we also got to make sure that we talk to our friends and neighbors and all that kind of stuff. Right. So I think that's really important. So, and if you're paying attention, you're at home, make sure you look at our shorts, you like, share, subscribe, get the information out to the people. This is part of how we win. This is part of how we push back against what the mainstream media is doing. By the way, just for the record, I'm open to interviewing people from all across the spectrum. The idea with this podcast is to inform people. So in the way that I want to give Owen an opportunity to share, like, what his plan is, where he's going, and what he's hoping to do, I want people to be informed, so I'll interview people who all across the spectrum. But I am a conservative, so there's that. So know that. And I want to see common sense policy. So, but yeah. Owen, thank you so much. Again, I always want to thank candidates for running in the first place, because, like, it is a huge sacrifice to put an R next to your name and tell people you're running for politics, especially with all the TDS running around. So I appreciate you being willing to do that. You really do, and you also have to, like, kind of have the constitution of somebody who works in a mental institution to not get caught, to not catch insanity from, like, all the crazy people in our state. It's and I mean that, seriously. It's like, it's some of the conversations that you have to have when you're trying to talk about politics and hearing the crazy stuff that you hear, but also the hate that comes around as a result of people's listening to too much MSDNC. and things like that. So,
not on the
so
Muddy
thank you
Waters
for
podcast.
running.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. We try to keep the insanity to a minimum. If it's there, we're laughing at it. So, and thanks to everybody who watched and commented. We had a couple of comments on here from Cider, Christopher Richards, and then Lauren Beth, and also Christy Tracy. So thank you all for watching. And again, there'll be some shorts from this. I'm sure Owen will make his own shorts from it. So like, share, subscribe, do all that. And we'll be back again. I believe we'll be here tomorrow. But where can they find you, Owen, if people are interested in learning more?
You can find me on Facebook. Follow Owen from Maine. You can go to my website, owenfrommaine.com. Probably go to any social media. You can find Owen from Maine. On the website, front and center will be the plan. So click it, read it, send along feedback.
Yeah, if you're interested in a lot of reading, but seriously, if you want to know
a good bedtime story, you put your mate to sleep here, everybody. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could do that. Yeah. It could do that. No. If it's something you're not interested in, for sure. But if you're interested in like somebody's plan, I think there are a couple other candidates who have put out plans, but I think it's really helpful to show, again, the work that you've done. And I like what I'm hearing. So all right. Well, thank you